When I inherited my grandparents' 900-take estate, I quietly moved it into a place my greedy parents could never find. They spent years treating me like an outcast, but when the money arrived, they suddenly wanted to be my best friends. I stood in the center of my grandparents' living room, and for the first time in 25 years, it felt cold. The smell of lavender and old books was still there, but the warmth was gone. My grandfather, a man who worked 40 years in the steel mills, had just been laid to rest, next to my grandmother, who had passed only 6 months prior. I was the only one in the house, or so I thought. Suddenly, the front door swung open with a violent bang. I jumped, my heart hammering against my ribs. In walked my mother and her brother, my Uncle Steve. They didn't look like people who had just buried their father. They looked like they were late for a Black Friday sale. "Where is it, Elena?" my mother snapped. She didn't even take off her coat. She walked straight to the mahogany desk in the corner and started ripping open drawers. "Where's what, Mom?" I asked. My voice was trembling. "The ledger," Uncle Steve said. He was already in the kitchen, emptying the cabinets onto the floor. "The old man didn't trust banks. We know he kept the physical certificates in the cash somewhere in this house." I watched them, disgusted. For the last 5 years, I was the only one who visited. I was the one who changed the bandages on Grandpa's legs. I was the one who made sure their grocery list was filled every Saturday morning. My mother and Steve, they only called when they needed a bridge loan that was never repaid. "They left the estate to me," I said quietly. My mother stopped mid-search. She turned around, her eyes narrow and sharp. "That's a lie. We're his children. Blood comes first. The lawyer has the will, Mom. They left me the house and everything in it." The look she gave me wasn't one of a mother looking at a daughter. It was the look of a predator realization its prey had found a weapon. "You think you're keeping it?" she hissed. "We'll see about that." They left as quickly as they arrived, vowing to see me in court. I sat down on the dusty sofa and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I thought that was the end of the confrontation. I thought I would just have to deal with some legal paperwork, but I was wrong, because what I found 3 hours later changed the entire game. I was checking the floorboards in the master bedroom, not because I was greedy, but because Grandpa had once told me, "Alina, if the world ever goes dark, look for the light under the bed." I pried up a loose plank near the nightstand. Underneath wasn't just a box. It was a heavy industrial-grade firebox. I used the key Grandpa had given me for my 21st birthday, the one he said was for a special jewelry box. I clicked it open and froze. Inside weren't just stock certificates. There were bundles of $100 bills, neatly rubber-banded, and a folder labeled "The Truth About the Accident." I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I knew the story. My older sister Sarah had died in a car crash when I was 10. My parents told me it was a hit and run. They told me the driver was never found. I opened the folder. Inside was a police report that had never been filed and a check stub from an insurance company for $500,000 made out to my mother and Uncle Steve. The driver wasn't a stranger. The driver was Steve. And they had used the insurance money to pay off the witnesses and start the businesses they eventually ran into the ground. My grandparents hadn't just saved money. They had been documenting the betrayal of their own children for 15 years. I realized then that if my mother and Steve got their hands on this estate, the truth would be buried forever. I looked at the cash. I looked at the certificates. The total value was roughly $900,000. I knew what I had to do. I didn't call the lawyer. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I spent the next 48 hours in a blur of motion. I moved the cash into a private offshore digital vault using a series of encrypted transfers Grandpa had taught me about when he was teaching me computer skills. I realized then that Grandpa knew this day would come. He didn't just leave me money. He left me a mission. By Monday morning, the physical assets in the house were gone. The boxes were empty. The ledger was in a safety deposit box 3 towns over. I was sitting on the porch, sipping a tea when the black sub pulled up. It was my mother, Steve, and a man in a cheap suit who I assumed was their lawyer. "Elena," Steve barked, walking up the steps, "we have a court order to freeze all assets related to the estate until the validity of the will is determined." I didn't get up. "You're a little late, Steve," I said. "What are you talking about?" my mother demanded. "The house is empty. The accounts are closed." "You little thief," my mother screamed. She lunged for me, but the lawyer held her back. "If you've moved those funds, you're looking at prison," the lawyer said. I leaned forward. "I didn't move my grandparents' money," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "I moved Sarah's money." The color drained from my mother's face. Steve actually took a step back, his hand shaking. What did you say?" he stammered. "I found the folder, Steve. I found the police report. I found the check stubs from 15 years ago." I stood up, towering over them from the porch. "The $900,000 isn't just an inheritance, it's the restitution you never paid. I thought that would be enough to make them run. I thought they would disappear to avoid the scandal. But greed does strange things to people. I thought that was the end of the threats, but I was wrong, because that night someone tried to burn the house down while I was inside. I woke up to the smell of gasoline and the crackle of flames licking at the front door. I grabbed the firebox, the only thing I had left in the room, and smashed the window. I fell onto the grass, coughing and gasping for air. Through the smoke, I saw a figure standing near the tree line. It was Steve. He was holding a lighter. He wasn't trying to get the money anymore. He was trying to destroy the evidence. But he didn't realize one thing. I had already uploaded the contents of the folder to a cloud server, with a scheduled release to every major news outlet in the state if my heartbeat ever stopped. I looked him right in the eye as the sirens began to wail in the distance. "It's over, Steve," I whispered. The police arrived, but not for the estate. They arrived for the attempted murder, and as I sat in the back of the ambulance, wrapped in a blanket, I realized that my grandparents hadn't just given me an estate. They had given me the power to finally tell the truth. I quietly moved the remaining funds into a trust for victims of hit-and-run accidents, leaving exactly $1 for my mother and Steve, just so they couldn't claim they were forgotten in the will. Powerful final ending line: "They spent my whole life trying to make me feel small, but they forgot that even the smallest spark can burn down a house of lies. Inheritance isn't always about the money. Sometimes it's about the secrets we're left to carry." Have you ever discovered something about your family that changed everything? Tell me your story in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey of justice, hit that subscribe button for more.